You've heard of Icarus, Heracles, and the fall of Troy. But did you know there are Greek myths so strange, so haunting, that even time itself has tried to erase them? One of them explains why humans forget their dreams. Another tells of a king who feared the light of day. And the last, about a woman whose body scattered into stardust at dawn. These are not the polished myths of school books. They are the forgotten whispers, carried on the wind of ancient temples, told only by firelight before slipping back into the shadows. And here is where it touches you. Right now, as you prepare to close your eyes, the very same hidden images stir within your memory, the same shapes and shadows that the Greeks once tried to capture in story. Myths of the night, myths of silence, myths of sleep itself. Tonight, I will guide you into 3 nearly lost legends, where night and dream were as powerful as gods and warriors. You will hear of the children of sleep who shaped human visions. You will meet a ruler who cursed the sun, and you will drift among the stars with a woman who dissolved into the heavens. So, let us begin. Close your eyes. Feel the world around you quiet down, and step with me into ancient Hellas, where memory fades and the night begins to dream. Imagine yourself stepping into the heart of ancient Greece, long after the last rays of the sun have slipped behind the mountains. The sky above you is velvet dark, scattered with countless stars, brighter and closer than you have ever seen them in the modern world. The night is alive with warmth, yet every breeze carries with it the scent of the sea, salt, cool, and sharp, drifting inland toward the sleeping city. You walk slowly across marble stones that have been warmed by the day and now breathe out their gentle heat against your bare feet. The marble is smooth, polished by centuries of footsteps, yet faint cracks and edges remind you of the age of this place. Beneath your steps, you feel history itself, solid and unyielding. Around you, the air carries mingled fragrances, the heavy sweetness of olive oil burning in small lamps, the resinous smoke of incense curling upward from bronze bowls, and the faint spice of herbs, rosemary, thyme, and myrtle, left as offerings at hidden shrines. Each scent lingers, overlapping, creating a symphony of memory and devotion. A wind stirs. It whistles softly between tall Doric columns, brushing against carved stone, as if the gods themselves breathe upon the temple. The sound is hollow, yet soothing, like the voice of an ancient choir echoing across empty halls. In the distance, you hear the rhythmic creak of a wooden cart retreating into silence, the faint bleating of a goat, the muffled laughter of someone far away. But here, in this sacred place, the stillness grows thicker. Flickering torches cast shifting pools of gold upon white marble. The fire dances on the walls, painting faces in motion. Shadows of long-gone worshippers, perhaps, or the gods themselves in disguise. You notice how the light wavers when the wind catches it, how a single torch can transform the vast temple into a living, breathing creature of flame and shadow. Close your eyes for a moment, and you feel it. The cool weight of stone pressing around you, the gentle warmth of the earth rising beneath you, the faint vibration of chanting voices carried on the night air. Priests and priestesses gather in the temple of Hypnos, the god of sleep. Their voices are hushed, their words ancient and melodic, weaving a net of stillness that seems to settle over your very skin. Now, let me guide you into the temporal bridge. Imagine that you are lying down, not in your modern bed, not in the comfort of a soft sheets, but on a pallet of straw within a small stone cell near the sanctuary. The floor is cold beneath you, the straw uneven but strangely grounding. A single oil lamp flickers beside you, its flame stretching and bending as if it, too, were growing drowsy. You inhale, and the smoke of incense seeps into your lungs, thick and sweet, carrying with it a strange calm. You exhale, and your breath joins the breath of countless dreamers who once came here seeking visions, seeking healing, seeking prophecy in the silence of sleep. Can you hear it? In the distance, a low bronze bell tolls, slow and measured. Its echo drifts across the temple, through the colonnades, and into your chamber. It is not the sound of alarm or urgency, but of release. The sound of a world surrendering tonight. And so, your body begins to surrender too. Muscles soften. Your heartbeat slows. The rhythm of the priest's chanting blurs into the rhythm of your own breath. Somewhere between waking and sleeping, you realize you are no longer here in this age. You are there, in another time. A time when gods walked beside men. A time when dreams were not private shadows, but messages from the divine. And so, our journey truly begins. Her name is Phlegyas, a weaver from a coastal town where the sea rinses the streets each morning with salt and rumors. By day, she lifts her shuttle through the warp and weft, binding threads into patterns that customers call waves and laurel, though the designs also hold traces of stories she cannot quite remember. By night, she lies awake, eyes open to the dark rafters, feeling as if the world has shifted a fraction to the left, and all her thoughts have slid into some hidden channel where she cannot reach them. On the eve of the new moon, Phlegyas walks the hill toward the small sanctuary of sleep. Oil lamps bead the path like patient stars. She carries an offering wrapped in linen, a lock of her hair, a pinch of barley, and the memory of a name that has begun to fade, though she still knows its shape on her tongue. She leaves these at the threshold, presses her forehead to the cool stone, and whispers, "Let me dream truly, or let me forget truly, but do not leave me between." The priest's hand is warm as he guides her inside. The floor is polished from centuries of bare feet. The walls breathe incense and laurel smoke. He murmurs a prayer, not to the loud gods of thunder and bronze, but to the gentle, exact God, whose eyelids are feathers and whose footsteps are dew. "Hypnos," he says, "brother of throne of silence, father of the dream children, send one who is kind." Phlegyas lies upon a pallet of straw within a cell that smells of myrtle, old stone, and olive oil. She listens to her breath settle. The night leans closer, and when the bell in the courtyard sounds once, gently as a fingertip on glass, the air cools across her forehead like a wing. Oneiros comes as a figure at the threshold, neither man nor shade, but something that has learned manners from both. His lantern throws a circle of quiet light. At its edge hover two presences, one with the patient hands of a sculptor, Morpheus, who molds human faces, another with a wild, watchful tilt to his head, Phobator, who brings the shapes of animals. The third lingers like a breeze lifting a curtain, Phantasos, who wears stone and water and the softness of clouds. The brothers, children of sleep, are not jealous tonight. They stand a little back, as if it is Oneiros' turn to walk alone. He does not speak with words. He lowers the lantern, and its glow does not burn the eyes. It opens them. Phlegyas stands, but her body remains at rest. She is standing in a room made of breath and memory, where her loom is taller than a doorway, and the threads glitter like river water. Oneiros points, and she sees that each thread is a path she might have walked, the path where she married the fisherman with the kind laugh. the path where she traveled inland and learned the names of rare dyes, the path where she bore a son who loved storms, a daughter who sang to bees. All the paths she did not take are not gone. They sing very softly, as if they were taken in another world that leans against this one. Which is true? She asks without speaking. Oneiros tilts the lantern. In its glow, the paths do not choose her. They bless her. She feels the blessing as warmth in her hands, in the small ache across her shoulders where the loom's beam presses each day. She understands, not with the mind that does sums and lists, but with the deeper mind that tastes rain before it falls, that truth is broader than a single road. It is the whole map breathing at once. But there is a darker thread, too. It whispers in a voice she knows. The name that is leaving her. The face that grows paler whenever she reaches for it. A mother, perhaps. Or a friend who used to sit at the end of the bench by the market and laugh with her about the way pigeons swagger like kings. She tries to seize the thread. It runs like water through her fingers. Oneiros lifts his free hand. The lantern dims until the room is only outline and pulse. There is a mercy in forgetting, the gesture says. There is a mercy in remembering. The two mercies are twins, like day and night, like Hypnos and his brother, who waits beyond all doors. You cannot hold both at once. If you carry every name, every sorrow, every glint of possible life, your arms will be too heavy for sleep. Then let one be chosen, Phlegyas begs. Her breath floats like a small bird in the dark. The brothers step closer. Morpheus shapes the face she cannot seize. It is tender, flawed, gorgeously human. Phobator brings the voice of the pigeons on a ledge, the weight of a cat leaping to her lap, the honest fear of a storm at sea. Beast things that carry the body back into the world. Phantassos sets a bowl of water before her. In it drift leaves the color of old bronze, going where the current wills. The bowl is stone. The stone is cloud. The cloud is a hand, and the hand is letting go. Phlegyas closes her eyes. The lantern of Oneiros is now only warmth against her cheek, like a mother's palm when fever breaks. She understands the bargain. Tonight she will remember the kindness, the warmth of the hand, the weight of the cat, the face made whole by Morpheus. She will forget the ache's sharpest edge. She will wake with a tear she cannot explain and a lightness she does not need to defend. The bell sounds again. The cell smells of myrtle and old stone and olive oil. Morning has not yet come, but somewhere dawn is practicing behind the mountains. Phlegyas sleeps. This time, sleep is a place, not a fight. The ancients did not treat dreams as accidents. They built thresholds for them. In towns and on lonely hillsides, sanctuaries welcomed the weary to a ritual called incubation. Sleep sought deliberately. Sleep invited as a guest. You would wash with cool water, anoint your temples with oil, eat simply, leave a small offering. The priests would chant names that were not shouted in marketplaces. Hypnos for gentleness, Oneiros for the skill of shaping, and, in certain sanctuaries, a healer who listened through the night for what bodies say when tongues are quiet. Dreams were messages, yes, but also maps. A farmer might sleep on the temple stones and wake certain that he should change the furrow's angle to catch more rain. A mother might be told which herb to boil with honey for a child's cough. A sailor might be warned away from a harbor where the sea keeps a second set of ledgers no human eyes can read. The messages were not always direct. The priests learned to translate. They watched how a lamp guttered when a name was spoken, how a dreamer's fingers clenched at the mention of iron, how the throat softened when the wind's sound was imitated. Interpretation was a craft, half listening, half mercy. In the sanctuary of sleep, workshops of silence flourished. A scribe in the corner wrote down dreams in a neat, careful hand, the ink brown as dried figs. He did not judge. He copied the language exactly. A horse with feathers crossed the courtyard. My dead sister asked for shoes. A river ran uphill and spoke my childhood nickname. The scrolls smelled of glue and wool. They stacked into a library of nights. Outside the sacred walls, dream belief braided itself into daily life. Fishermen knotted a certain pattern in their nets in honor of the brother who governs animal shapes, pleading for the sea's creatures to come near and not flee in panic. Women chalked small symbols of clouds and stones beside their doorways, a nod to the sibling who dresses dreams in the forms of inanimate things. Children, terrified after a nightmare, were soothed not with "it wasn't real," but with "the dream was strong tonight, but see, morning is stronger." The language itself gave nightmares a place to stand, and in giving them a place, it sometimes took away their teeth. There were skeptics, of course. A philosopher in the agora might lean his elbow on a column's cool belly and declare that dreams are mere echoes of daytime, the appetite arguing with itself in the dark. And yet even he, when fever burned him low, would send a friend to the sanctuary with a votive plaque shaped like a pair of lungs, hoping the night would breathe differently over him. Practical men, poets, midwives, soldiers, each in their season trusted the night to give them what the day withheld. Ritual made that trust easier. Before sleep, the priest would strip the room of sharp noises. He would ask the dreamer to name a single worry, to set it in an empty bowl by the bed. "Let Oneiros find it there," he would say, "so he does not have to search your chest." He would pinch out all but one lamp. "Let the last light be the light you follow." He would hum, not words, just the shape of calm, and the room would answer, because rooms become what we ask them to become, the way people do. When dreamers woke, they did not rush away. They sat with tea made from bitter leaves, told their night sight in slow voices, and listened for their own breath while they spoke, as if the breath were a second storyteller. Often they left with nothing but a softened brow. Sometimes they left with a clarity that changed the course of a day, and therefore a life. The sanctuary measured its success not in miracles, but in mornings. And the priests kept a doctrine close to the heart. Forgetfulness is not failure. Sleep had two gifts, the image and the release. Some dreams were meant to be remembered, to become patterns on a loom or decisions at a crossroads. Others were meant to be the river that rinses the city and runs on, carrying away the smells and ash of yesterday. To demand that every dream be caught and kept would be like asking the tide to stay because we enjoyed the look of its silver edge. Thus, the sons of sleep were honored not only for their visitations, but for their departures. The bell's second note, the one that Phlegyas heard, was as holy as the first. Level 3. Historical perspective. Before there were charts of the brain and words for its rhythms, the Greeks drew a different map, one that treated the night as a country with laws and citizens. They explained forgetting with a river's name. They explained the return of loved faces with a craftsman god who shaped them faithfully from mist. They explained the terror of beast dreams with a brother who wore claws because he had work to do. They explained the beauty of impossible scenes, marble bending like willow, mountains floating like feathers, with a sibling who could dress any truth in a gentler garment to make it bearable. This mythic framework did not compete with reason, it accompanied it. Philosophers wrote treatises about dreams, testing whether they came from indigestion or divine dispatch. Healers recorded the way sleep mended wounds that daylight could not persuade to close. Merchants learned, empirically, that a rested mind haggles better. But when the candle was pinched and the house sank into its own warmth, people still spoke the names of Hypnos and his children, because names are bridges in the dark. To a modern ear, this might sound like poetry wrapped around ignorance. Yet consider how much tenderness the older map preserves. It assumes that the human being is worthy of careful visitation, that our nights are not waste, but work of another kind, that mercy is built into the very fabric of forgetting. The myth treats the erasure of a name from the mind not as punishment, but as compassionate design. You may put down what is too heavy to lift into tomorrow. And if we, who count hours in glowing digits and measure rest in cycles and stages, listen long enough, we may hear the old wisdom underneath the new. Not every message must be decoded, not every image saved. Some visions come to be held close and turned in the hand like a small warm stone. Others come to be given back to the river as an offering. The distinction is not a failure of memory. It is the art of sleeping. When Phlegyas wakes, her hands are light. She cannot say why the bench at the market seems brighter, why the pigeons are so charmingly vain today, why the sea's smell feels like a friend's cloak. She remembers only a gentleness, the outline of a lantern, and a conviction so soft it cannot be argued with. She is allowed to rest. That permission is the gift Oneiros leaves under the pillow, wrapped in linen with a lock of hair and barley and the last breath before morning. The sanctuary will record her dream. The scribe will write, "A woman dreamed of threads that were roads. A lantern chose which to keep." The priest will nod. He will point her toward breakfast, toward the field of small decisions that make a day. He will tell her, "When the bell sounds at dusk, thank the night aloud as you did at dawn." Gratitude is another bridge the mind can walk in darkness without stumbling. And out beyond the town, beyond the olives and the bleached stones where lizards sun themselves, the brothers will begin their next circuit. Morpheus will practice the nose of a fisherman who laughs kindly so he can give it back to some other weaver in some other city. Phobator will rehearse the honest clatter of hooves and the comfort of a cat's weight so that bodies remember themselves. Phantasos will fold a cloud into the shape of a bowl and a bowl into the shape of an open hand. Oneiros will polish the lantern that gives off cool light, the kind that makes shadows friendly. They will come to you too, when your room is quiet and your breath has learned its night rhythm. You may not recall their faces. That does not mean they were not kind. And when the time is gentle and the heart is ready, we will walk on. To a king who feared the light and the lesson hidden in his shadow. He was a king, and his name was Phlegyas. He ruled a land ringed by pale hills that flashed like knives at noon. His roof beams were cedar. His throne was lion-footed. His soldiers lacquered their shields with sun-bright resin. Yet he walked his halls like a man hiding inside his own shadow. Once, before the fear took hold, he loved the morning. He would wake when the horizon was still a bruise of purple and listen to the first bird divide the silence. He would go to the eastern balcony and watch the light slide down the valley, pouring itself over olive leaves, filling the river's belly with silver. He believed the light made promises of clear judgment, of measured laws, of a world that could be known and ordered. Then came the loss that unstitched him. His daughter, laughter bright, faster than spring, fell into the orbit of a god whose arrows shine like noon. The story you've heard in fragments, how love turned complicated, how jealousy sharpened what should have stayed soft, how a message arrived too late, and the god's anger ran ahead of mercy. In the wreckage, Phlegyas found himself standing in a courtyard strewn with laurel leaves and ash. The sun watched everything. He decided the sun was cruel. After that day, light became an offense. He hung heavy curtains that swallowed windows whole. He ordered braziers placed deep inside chambers so that flame would glow but never glare. He had the mirrors linen-bound and stored in clay jars, as if reflections themselves were a contagion. When he must ride out, he wore a broad hood and a visor thinly hammered from bronze, its narrow slit making the world a cautious ribbon. People thought it was pride. It was pain. Servants learned to walk softly at dawn. His steward collected taxes at twilight only. His queen, patient and clever, mixed black wine with honey and ground poppy. She pressed the cup into his hand as the sky brightened. "Sleep through it," she whispered. "Let the day pass without touching you." Often he did. On those mornings, he dreamed of rooms where the light gentled like warm milk, where nothing revealed more than a person could bear. But a hatred had rooted. It grew in the columns of his throat, in the sinews of his jaw, in the tight way his hands closed over the arms of the lion-footed throne. It needed an object, a face, a name. He found it in the name that once promised clarity, Apollo. Phlegyas began to curse the god under his breath. At first, small words, then larger ones, until the curses were their own architecture, sturdier than the palace itself. Light had taken. Light would be paid back in kind. He studied maps, not of borders, but of temples. He learned the rhythms of processions, the hours when votive fires were fed. He kept messengers moving like ghost hairs through the night, gathering knowledge the way a storm gathers charge. One summer, the heat held like a tight fist. Rivers shortened, dust clothed the figs. Even the cicadas rasped as if their throats were raw. Phlegyas called his captains to a chamber, lit only by a single oil lamp whose flame trembled, too slender to accuse. "We strike at dawn," he said. The word burned his tongue. He spat it out like a coal. Not at a city, at a sun. They moved before the first rooster carved the dark, torches muffled, hoofbeats rapped. They rode the back roads toward the place where laurel grows thick and a tripod hums with a voice not entirely human. Delphi. He had been there once as a young man, had watched a priestess breathe and speak, had felt the hairs on his forearms rise like grain in sudden wind. He remembered the temple's white steps like teeth. He remembered, most of all, how the god's precinct made his heart behave itself, as if the day could compel a man to be straighter than he was. That now felt like an insult. The band crept up the sacred way in the last, thinning darkness. They carried skins of oil, bundles of pitch, a silence so taut it thrummed in their ears. Phlegyas climbed the steps quickly, as if speed itself could keep the day from arriving. He did not look at the omphalos stone. He did not look at the bronze guardians. He did not look at the doorway, framed like a mouth about to speak. He looked only at the lintels, the beams, the places where flame might take hold. He worked like a carpenter, exact, expressionless. Someone behind him whispered, "My king?" Wait for full dark again. The priests are sleeping, but the mountain is turning lighter. See how the ridge. Do not speak to me of light, he said, and the words were iron. He set the first torch himself. He touched fire to the oiled wood and heard the soft astonishment of it catching. Flame crawled like thought, then ran like rumor. A smell rose. Resin, laurel, old prayer boiled into air. For a heartbeat, Phlegyas felt tall. He felt as if the sun had been pulled down and harnessed to his chariot. He felt justice. Then the edge of the world opened its eye. Dawn. A single blade slid between hills. It found him. It found the smoke climbing. It found the gold on the temple's roof, waking into brightness as if it would burn of its own accord. Light struck his visor and poured through the narrow slit, dazzling, absolute. It was not a god's face, only morning. But he flinched as if a hand had slapped him. Men shouted, some in triumph, some in fear. Bells clamored. Laurel leaves tossed their green coins into the air. A wind came down the pass and pressed the flame flat so it ran, broad and low, under the eaves. The sound it made was like a beast panting. Phlegyas tried not to see. He dragged the edge of his hood lower. He told his eyes to be two stones. But light is patient and thorough. It reached under the visor. It slipped between the threads of the hood. It filled his mouth when he opened it to command. It made every speck of ash into a small star. It made every face, friend, enemy, priest, stranger, starkly human. And in that brightness, his anger thinned into something smaller, pettier, more naked. Not justice. Grief, looking for a weapon. A priest stumbled toward him, hair smoke-strung, laurel crown askew. King, the man cried, if you hate the god, leave the world he cares for intact. Fire is not argument. Dawn will come again, with or without your consent. What you burn is our place to be honest in daylight. Phlegyas raised his hand to strike. In the act of lifting it, he caught sight of his own palm, scarred from years of writing, lines like riverbeds. The light climbed those lines and made them beautiful. The sudden gentleness of the sight undid him. He lowered his hand. Then pride, outraged, lifted it a second time, and he brought it down hard enough to satisfy the part of him that could not bear to be tender. By noon, the temple was a skeleton of blackened wood and stubborn stone. The god's precinct smelled of wet ash and salt tears. The sun was everywhere, comprehending everything. He was taken in chains before the day finished its arc. He was taken below. In the places where no breeze moves, where flame has become a law rather than a tool, there is a figure who paces and calls out like a bell. Learn justice. Be warned. Some say that is Phlegyas still, shouting his own sentence through the halls of shadow. He walks not because he cannot stop, but because every time he tries to stand still, the memory of dawn finds him, and he must move to outrun it. He does not succeed, but the motion helps. On certain nights, when the world above is very quiet and your breathing is slow and regular, the shout becomes a murmur. It sounds less like threat and more like care. Learn gentleness, it says. Light can wound, light can heal. Do not throw a torch where a window will do. And sometimes, though he would deny it if asked, Phlegyas sleeps. In those moments, the light he feared darkens to something kinder, the color of warm milk, the hue of a hand held over a candle so the blood glows inside it. He dreams of his daughter standing on a balcony at dawn, laughing, pointing. He does not look at the sun. He looks at her face and finds it sufficient to understand why Phlegyas's act was more than arson, why it rang like a strike on the very rim of the world, You must know what light meant among the people of the God he defied. Apollo's worship braided together clarity, measure, and revelation. He was the patron of clean song and clean lines, of the straight-aimed arrow and the straight-ruled road, of oaths that are not bent by appetite. In his precincts, daylight was not merely weather, it was a moral condition. Doors stood open, courtyards were swept, speech was tuned, neither too much nor too little, and the phrase carved in temple stone urged a kind of brightness for the soul. Know yourself. Another phrase, close beside it, warned against glare, nothing in excess. Rituals reflected this balance. At dawn, priests lifted their faces to the east, not to be dazzled, but to be oriented. They washed in cool water, then in light, standing with eyes closed until the sun's warmth, thin as silk, brushed their foreheads. Laurel branches were shaken so that the leaves made a sound like rain. Hymns were sung in modes that calmed the chest and slowed the heart. The day was welcomed the way a guest is welcomed who has the right to see your house in order. Prophecy, too, came wrapped in illumination. In the inner chamber, the priestess sat upon a tripod, laurel in hand, voice altered by the mystery of her office. Petitioners did not imagine that the god's words would arrive like a noon blaze. They expected slant light, riddled, angled, asking the hearer to participate. That, too, was a kind of moral education. The light that reveals is not always the light that overwhelms. Often, it is a shaft through a lattice, guiding rather than stripping. Because of this texture of practice, darkness was not despised. It had its own precincts, its own gods, its own chambers for sleep and birth and grief. But anti-light, the refusal of brightness as a principle, felt like an attack on the human project. Markets, assemblies, courts, and schools kept their hours by the sun. Mothers measured fevers at dawn. Farmers read rain in the way, morning spoke on the skin. To war against light was, symbolically, to war against common life. So when Phlegyas set his fire, people heard more than crackling roof beams. They heard a cry against openness. They felt a bite at the idea that things could be made plain enough to discuss, decide, repair. They saw the insult laid at the feet of a god who guarded proportion, and they feared what follows when proportion is mocked, hybris, the swelling that comes before a fall. In taverns and courtyards, the story traveled and changed. Some told it hard. The king burned daylight itself. Others told it soft. He could not bear what morning makes visible, his loss, and so he punished the thing that revealed it. Priests at other shrines tightened their rituals. Mothers taught their children a new proverb: face the east gently. Sailors knotted an extra loop in their ropes, one to honor the sun, one to honor shade. People learned anew something they had always half known: that light can be an instrument of cruelty if wielded without care, that the right kind of brightness is tender and exact. And in the sanctuaries of sleep, where candles are small and voices smaller, his daughter's grandson would one day be honored, a healer whose patients sought cures in dreams. The Asclepiae kept lamps low. They listened for the whisper of the night. They taught that what the day could not mend, sleep might. In those courts of quiet, Apollo's line and the line of Phlegyas crossed and reconciled. Light and night shook hands. Long before anyone traced electrical storms in the brain, the Greeks were already theorizing about inner weather. They intuited, with the accuracy of poets and close watchers of life, that brightness and darkness are not only conditions of sky, but conditions of mind. Phlegyas, in this lens, embodies the earliest outline of an idea we recognize clearly now. A person can turn against the very faculty that reveals truth because truth hurts. He becomes the figure of rebellion against exposure, not simply a criminal, but a consciousness trying to dim the lamp that shows its losses. If earlier myths warned against stealing fire, this one warns against fleeing light. A different sin, born not of hunger, but of grief and pride. Seen this way, his story sketches a psychology before psychology. The curtains he draws across windows look like avoidance. The hood and visor become coping, rigid and costly. The arson reads as catastrophic relief, the action that promises to silence pain by destroying its mirror. The punishment, endless pacing in a place where flame is law, translates as an allegory of rumination. The mind going over and over the same hot thought until even warning sounds like prayer. The culture around him, meanwhile, stages a debate about light that moderns still conduct. On one side, the Apollonian conviction: clarity is good, order is merciful, revelation heals. On the other, a suspicion: light can humiliate, glare can bleach nuance, exposure can be violence. The wisdom carved in stone, nothing in excess, offers the middle way. Let there be light enough to see and choose. Let there be shadow enough to protect and grieve. The most humane brightness has edges softened by compassion. What, then, does the myth teach a listener lying in a dark room, coaxing sleep? That you do not have to love noon to honor morning. That you can draw the curtain a little and still let a thin, kind blade of day find your face. That your losses are not safer when you burn the places that witness them. They are safer when you name them gently and let time touch them in measured light. That sleep, in its quiet republic, practices the balance, lowering the glare until the mind can meet itself without armor. In the soft ethics of night, Phlegyas becomes less a villain than a warning bell with a human throat. Learn justice. Be warned. Learn a justice applied first to yourself. Do not force your eyes to look into harsh brilliance when they have been crying. Do not keep them forever closed, because seeing is hard. Practice the tender light, the kind that dawn knows, the kind that enters a room like a guest who removes his sandals at the door. And if, now and then, a memory flares too bright and you flinch, you can borrow the queen's medicine without poppy or wine. Breathe slowly. Let light pass across your closed lids. Imagine a balcony and a voice pointing you toward the hills. Keep your gaze on the face you love, not on the sun that surrounds it. The old story ends below, with a pacing king and a phrase that sounds like iron. Our story pauses above, where flame is a tool again, and windows are instruments of mercy. We will leave Phlegyas to his lesson and follow the path that light lays when it behaves itself. Not a blaze, but a ribbon, just wide enough for a traveler to walk without stumbling. And from that ribbon, we will step into the sky itself, to a woman who escaped pursuit by dissolving into stars. Her name is Asteria, Starry One, daughter of Titans and sister to gentle Leto. She wore night like a shawl, even at noon. The gleam of her eyes held constellations in embryo, and when she turned her head quickly, people swore they saw a thin trail of light follow, the way a spark hangs for a heartbeat after iron is struck. In the beginning, or what passes for beginning in a house as old as hers, Asteria loved thresholds. The line between dusk and dark, the moment when the day's last heat lifts and the first cool breath of evening arrives like a messenger with bare feet. She walked the olive terraces at that hour, listening to crickets open their tiny lutes, watching shepherd fires wink into being one by one on the hills. Children pointed and said, "She is counting stars before they hatch." The gods saw her too. One in particular, the one who believed he had a right to everything that shone, fixed his gaze. Zeus is often told in thunder and oak, but there is another telling more dangerous for its quiet: the persistence of a will that confuses love with possession. He followed Asteria as the horizon followed the sun, and when he reached for her, she felt how praise can turn into a hand and a hand into a cage. Asteria knew the ordinary ways of refusal. She crossed the square with other women at midday, so that many eyes would mean safety. She asked her uncles to keep watch, their old shoulders squared with pride. She slept in rooms whose doors had bolts and whose windows were set high. But the insistence did not dim. It learned the angles of her life, the way rain learns the cracks in a stone. So she called upon her first craft, metamorphosis. She folded herself into the shape of a quail, small, swift, earth-colored, and burst upward, astonishing her own breath with the speed of it. For a while the sky was a cloak, and the god below merely a rumor among humans. But the rumor grew tall. On the last night before harvest, when the moon was a thin coin you could lose between finger and thumb, she climbed a headland where the land narrowed bravely into sea. A cypress stood there, black and intent. She laid her palm along its trunk and felt the cold traveling inside it like a thought. "If I become a tree," she whispered, "I will grow rings, and time will widen me, and he will call that patience. He will wait. Trees are loyal to their ground." There was the sea. She could leap. She imagined the water closing over her like sleep, imagined the body turning to island, to bone-white rock that sailors would bless for breaking storms. She tasted salt on her lip and knew the sea would be a kind mother. But ships charted seas. Gods learned islands' names. Even a sanctuary can become an address. Then, how do we explain the courage that arrives as if carried by wind? Asteria looked upward, not along the earth. The stars above her were still ghosts, but the east was already carrying the ashes of tomorrow's light. She thought of thresholds again, of what lies between. She thought of the way sparks spring from iron and disappear, not because they die, but because they have found a realm too fine for the human eye. "If a door exists," she said, "let it open." She stood at the cliff's lip, where the night is steepest. When the god called her name the last time, softly now, as if he were learning tenderness too late, Asteria stepped forward and became motion. She did not dissolve in despair. She chose a trajectory. Her body lifted like a lifted vow. Her hair unraveled into filaments of light. Her bones, which had always been strong, turned to a hail of bright grains. She leapt not into water, but into sky, and in leaping, she found the rule that governs meteors. The faster you go, the gentler you look. Below, a shepherd cried out, pointing at a ribbon of brilliance tearing the night. "A star has fallen," he shouted. An old woman at her hearth murmured, "No, someone has risen." Children ran, hands open, to catch the sparks that did not burn. A lone sailor, far from any temple, took off his cap and held it to his chest without knowing why. The god on the headland lowered his hand. He saw his own face reflected very small in 1,000 bright grains, and did not like it. This is not a story about him. Asteria's flight did not end. Falling is merely what mortals call it when a thing chooses a new center. She found hers among the calm voices that live beyond weather. She stitched herself into the black cloth and became a path others could follow, a pale, populous road bending from horizon to horizon. Later tongues would name it the Milky Way. Earlier hearts called it a memory made visible. If you have ever looked up on a cold night and felt tears prickle for no particular reason, you have already met her. From there, she learned a second craft, to scatter without disappearing. On some nights, she lent herself to showers, a rush of soft fire that seemed dangerous, but met the earth like hush. On others, she arranged herself in slow punctuation, bright here, dark there, as if writing a sentence for anyone patient enough to read. You may refuse what harms you, even if the refusal must become your new shape. Her sister Leto stood on a quiet shore and did not weep. She pressed both palms to her own belly. Two small lights were wandering under her skin and whispered, "Be safe, sky sister. Make of yourself a harbor." The sea breathed. Somewhere, a quail nested in grass that held the faintest perfume of starlight. And high above, where cold is law but not cruelty, Asteria rested, if rest can describe a constancy so luminous. She had not escaped life. She had changed its grammar. The world below would go on insisting, bargaining, making rules, breaking them, telling names to behave. But in the margin written between two stars, a woman's no glowed steadily enough to guide. To hear Asteria's story as more than ornament, you have to listen to the women in the old songs and the choices those songs give them, and the ones the songs barely dare to say aloud. In the Greek imagination, the female divine is everywhere. Fertile fields and faithful hearths, keen dawns and honest nights, the sly edge of Eros and the lawful weight of marriage, the soft hands of midwives and the iron will of queens. Hera keeps oaths, Demeter keeps harvests, Artemis guards the wild and the young who do not yet belong to cities. Athena stands with spear and counsel both. Hecate holds the keys to crossroads, doorways, the places where one becomes another. Nyx is night itself. Selene is the moon, riding calm across it. And Leto, Asteria's sister, will one day bear twins whose names reshape noon and music alike. Yet the stories do not hide the friction. A world ordered by Olympians, the new regime of thunder and decree, is constantly negotiating with older powers, titans, elements, primordial orders that do not bend easily. Many myths are parables of power encountering refusal. Men chase, women change. A nymph becomes a laurel. A girl becomes reeds. A sister of night becomes starlight. To modern ears, this can sound like capitulation, safety purchased with self-erasure. But the older tellers smuggled other meanings too. Metamorphosis is not only escape, it is self-definition in a world that names you without asking. Sanctuaries gave this defiance a ritual home. In places sacred to Artemis, girls ran, shouted, shook off the training that would make them pliant wives. They were allowed, for a season, to belong to wildness. In the torchlit rites of Hecate, women kept secrets for one another about births and sickness and the remedies that men's courts did not understand. At the hearth of Hestia, a different sovereignty burned. No crown, no chariot, just the quiet law that a guest be fed and the door stay genuine. These practices taught a grammar, that a woman's body and choice are not provinces to be annexed by any king, mortal, or skyborn. Under that grammar, Asteria's decision reads as doctrine. You may move the boundary when the boundary fails you. If the city cannot keep you safe, become a grove. If the sea is charted by those who chase you, become an island that moves. If land itself can be claimed, find a kingdom of fine things. Spark, breath, a path only eyes can walk, and rule there. It is not surrender to change your medium and keep your name. Notice, too, how the story weaves kinship. Asteria's sister will need a harbor. In some tellings, the woman who escaped the sky becomes Delos, the sacred ground where Leto finally brings forth her children, Apollo and Artemis, under a compact of protection. In our night softer version, Asteria turns road of stars, and Delos becomes any place small and brave enough to float until it is anchored by a covenant. Either way, one woman's refusal becomes another woman's refuge. This is how cults and communities grow. A history of no becomes a geography of yes. The Olympian order understood this in its wiser moods. Zeus, the very figure Asteria outwitted, swears oaths by things older than himself, because elder laws keep even sky kings honest. He knows, somewhere behind the roar, that cosmos, order, means beauty first, rule second. When Hera binds a marriage, when Athena argues better law into being, when Artemis refuses the sacrifice of a wild creature simply because it is wild, when Hecate guards a woman who does not wish to explain herself at a threshold, the world holds. The light and the dark do not compete in these moments. They concur. Under such concurrence, Asteria's annual gifts become communal weather. When meteors itch across the sky, lovers make vows. Healers cut herbs said to drink starlight better that night. Sailors set out with extra confidence, and mothers tell daughters on stoops, "See? There is a road above the roads, and it is patient." In the story of women versus rule, there is no permanent victory or loss, only a rhythm: claim, resist, transform, rest. Asteria is the resting beat made visible. She asks nothing, demands nothing, pries no decree loose. She glows, and it is enough. Long before telescopes, the Greeks lifted their faces and let the sky write itself on their eyes. They called the world cosmos, order, ornament, a thing arranged so beautifully it persuades. The night especially argued for order, fixed stars holding their stations, wanderers, planets, behaving in charts, cycles returning as faithfully as a shepherd's dog. From this steadiness grew calendars, seed times, sailing seasons, a sense that the gods were not merely appetites in costume, but laws with faces. Where did falling stars fit? They were anomalies, fleeting, splendid, slightly lawless. Poets and priests did not waste the disruption. They turned it into doctrine. Meteors could be omens, yes, but not only of kings' fortunes. They could speak to households and hearts. Asteria, by name and myth, became a way to explain exception without ruining order. Her story allowed the sky to remain reliable while making room for mercy. Sometimes a bright thing breaks ranks not to frighten, but to free. Different cities told her myth with different emphases, because cosmology grows out of geography. Island people liked the version where she becomes Delos, the traveling ground that finally accepts a tether and becomes the safest spot in the Aegean for a laboring woman. Inland folk, with winter skies so clear they felt close enough to broom, treasured the version where she turns to stardust, a sanctuary that no spearline could surround. Both forms preserve an early Greek habit: let metamorphosis knit the world. Rivers were once maidens, mountains, once daunted but faithful men. Constellations, once stories that would not fit on earth. Creation, in this vision, is not a single command, but an ongoing conversation. Shape speaking to shape, asking, what else might you be to keep the harmony? Even as philosophers grew ambitious, naming elements, debating whether all substance is fire or water or number, the sky remained pastoral, a field tended by gods who answer in images because images are what humans remember. Asteria is an early sentence in that language. She says, "The cosmos is a refuge for the righteous refusal." She also says, "Beauty is a kind of law." If you place her beside later inquiries into mind and matter, she still holds. In the spiritual grammar of a sleep temple, she is the dream that comes after terror, the one that shows an exit where the waking world had none. In the moral grammar of a city, she is civil disobedience written in light. No doors kicked, no throats raised, just a clear, undeniable path across the dark that keeps being there until others learn it by heart. In the cosmic grammar of beginnings, she is diffusion, force softened into pattern, energy finding rest as stars find their places. And for a listener lying with eyes closed, she offers a practice more intimate than myth. When you feel the day's demands chase you into the first inches of sleep, scatter. Let thought become fine. Become many gently shining things instead of one heavy one. Make a road across your own dark. Let your breath travel it, in and out, until it knows the way without you watching. If a memory reaches like a hand, you do not have to slap it away. You can change medium, from argument to image, from fear to rhythm, from being cornered to being constellated. The old stories say that Asteria sometimes visits as a single slow fire, one long silver thread drifting across the ink. Sailors take that as luck. Parents lift sleepy children and say, "Make a wish." Priests nod without sermon. Philosophers, who love names, smile and admit that some truths arrive unnamed and are no less true for it. And perhaps, on a night when you cannot sleep, you will feel the softest scratch of light behind your eyelids, as if someone were writing a calm sentence there. It will say nothing urgent. It will say only, "You are allowed to be elsewhere." It will say, "You can be many without being lost." It will say, "The dark is not your enemy. It is your canvas." Asteria will keep watch, not like a guard, but like a road that never ends. And now, with our three myths breathing quietly in the room, the children of sleep, the king who flinched at dawn, and the woman who wove herself into the sky, we will gather their threads. The heartbeat will slow. The voices will braid. The night will lead us gently toward stillness. The bell from the sleep sanctuary sounds once, as it did for Phlegyas, and the note travels farther than sound should travel. It moves through the colonnades where oil lamps thin the dark into honey. It moves down into places where Phlegyas paces, his steps counting the cost of a torch he can never put down. It moves up into the high cold where Asteria writes her steady sentence across black silk. One note, then another. And with each, the night gathers itself. Near the temple of Hypnos, dreamers settle. The straw gives beneath their backs the way a shallow wave gives underfoot before it slides away. Oneiros lifts his lantern in room after room, not to expose, but to open. Faces soften, hands unclench. Names find the shelves where they can rest without falling. The priest's hum carries through the corridor, and the air answers with the small, invisible harmonies that silence makes when it is well tended. Across the valleys, Shar is still tucked into cracks at Delphi. Rain has not yet washed it all away. At noon, even after years, if you pass a fingertip along certain stones, your skin will come away gray. But this is not noon. This is the hour when the world consents to dim. And even Phlegyas, some versions say, finds a ledge where the flame's law loosens. and the mind can practice gentler weather. He turns his head toward where dawn would be if dawn were allowed here, and in that motion is an almost prayer. Above, the sky is busy in a way that looks like stillness. Faint, patient constellations hold their places as if pinning down a map. The Milky Way, Asteria's road, leans like a silver oar against the dark. Now and then, one long spark crosses and erases itself into blessing. Children in many towns make wishes they will not remember in the morning. No matter, the wish remembers them for a while. That is enough. 3 stories, 3 movements, begin to approach one another like travelers converging on a spring. Phlegyas turns in her sleep and smiles without waking. The shoulder that aches by day loosens under an unseen hand. In the place of punishment, a pacing king counts backward from 10, from 9, from 8, and finds that numbers can be rope ladders, not only chains. On the headland of every coast, a woman who once said no keeps writing yes in a language of light. The wind rises, then it gentles. Torches flutter in their brackets, then they steady. The night is not empty. It is populated with mercies and with lessons. As we walk deeper, those mercies and lessons begin to rhyme. Forgetfulness in the sleep chamber rhymes with forgiveness in the underworld. Both are privileges granted by the dark when it is wise. The careful light of Oneiros' lantern rhymes with the right kind of daylight, the kind Phlegyas once believed in, before grief sharpened it into a blade. And Asteria's scattering rhymes with a practice we can learn tonight, letting what chases us pull apart into fine, harmless glitter until it cannot grip. You feel the braid tighten. The bell's distant note echoes the beat of your own breath. The story moves a little faster, just enough to gather itself for a turning. Climax, the old fear and the old hope. There is an ancient place inside the human chest where fear and hope share a wall. We push one side and the other trembles. For thousands of years, people have come to the night to test that joint. Imagine a single courtyard that holds them all. A woman asleep on a pallet. A king sitting with clenched jaw on steps still warm from daylight. A star-made road arcing over both. The courtyard is not in any city we can name. It is the space between your heartbeat and your breath. Oneiros lifts his lantern. The light is cool, the way moonlight cools stone. It falls on Phlegyas' face. She sighs. It falls on Phlegyas' hands. The scars glow like old rivers that have learned their course. It rises into the air and becomes a thin mist, and in that mist, Asteria's path sharpens, bright dust gathering itself into guidance. At once, without hurry, images arrive that do what only images can do. They make ideas behave like living things. The loom in Phlegyas' dream shows its warp as roads again, and now one thread runs straight through the king's hall, then straight out into the night, to rise through the air and become a meteor. If you could touch it, it would hum with recognition. It holds 3 lessons, and they are older than any temple. The first, not everything must be remembered to be loved. Grief taught Phlegyas to hate light because light revealed what he could not bear to lose. But the night teaches another angle. You can let the sharpest edges of a memory dissolve and still keep its kindness, its weight, its usefulness. Phlegyas cannot hold the face she chased, and yet she wakes sweetened by it, not robbed. The cosmos itself practices this. Stars burn, empty their cores, give back their matter to make room for future fire. Forgetting is not erasure, it is compost. The second, not every brightness heals. The cult of a god of measure and music knew this well, even as they loved the morning. Light can glare and interrogate. It can humiliate. It can tempt us to think that seeing is the same thing as understanding. The right light is proportionate, like the shaft that comes through a lattice and shows exactly the path of your feet. Oneiros' lantern is that sort of lamp, and the dawn that Phlegyas learned to fear can, in gentler weather, be that sort of day. The lesson glows around the edges, where excess fades to tact. The third, refusal can become guidance. Asteria's no, made at a cliff's lip, becomes a yes for anyone needing a way across the dark. The Milky Way looks like ornament. It acts like infrastructure. Whole migrations, in ages to come, will walk by it without arc or compass. Travelers will not say, "I follow a woman." They will say, "I follow the road of white." But the road remembers who it once was. These three lessons stand in the courtyard as if they had bodies. They do not argue. They radiate. For a long, generous moment, the corridor between fear and hope is wide open and lit just enough, and you can walk there without stumbling. You may feel, right now, that this is the place where everything inside you has permission to be as it is. You may feel an ache rise and then, like a wave that has decided not to break, slide back into the larger water. You may sense that the old human habit of tying terror and wonder to the same star is not a mistake, but a method. The night has always been a mirror. It shows us without stripping us. It receives whatever we bring and hands it back in slower motion so we can bear to look. The bell sounds once more. This time, you cannot tell whether it is stone or bone that rings. The braid is as tight as it will get. We have reached the middle of the rope. We will not pull harder. We will let go, a little, and let the rope remember how to be slack. Resolution. Secrets we keep with the dark. The stories loosen their grip without unraveling. Phlegyas turns on her side. The straw whispers. A small smile lingers without explanation. In the morning, she will prepare her loom with a new pattern she cannot name. It will look like waves. It will look like laurel. It will somehow also look like the Milky Way. When a customer asks what she calls it, she will shrug and say, "Night walk." The priest in the sanctuary will write a few lines in the book of dreams. He will set his pen down and feel, for a breath or two, astonishingly rested. In the depth where flame is statute, Phlegyas sits. He is not pacing. He is measuring the distance between his hands. For once, he does not try to keep the morning from finding him. He simply names what it would show if it could. A father who loved, a rage that lied about its purpose, a body that is very tired. The call that once rang like iron, learn justice, be warned, softens into learn mercy, be gentle. The warning remains, because warnings are also forms of care, but the voice has learned a different register. Somewhere, someone who has said harsh things to himself for years finds that tonight he can say them more softly. The world does not collapse. The ceiling holds. High above, Asteria continues a labor that looks effortless. She keeps watch without watching. She is not a guard. She is a road. On a quiet coast, a woman wakes to nurse a child and steps to the doorway. The sky makes room in her chest. She does not think of titans or oaths. She thinks, there is space enough. A man on a ship comes off his watch and leans against a coil of rope, looking up. He has been angry for months and cannot remember what at. The anger lifts the way fog lifts. Suddenly it is not there, and there is no evidence it ever will be again. He laughs once, very quietly, so as not to wake anyone. Humans and gods Both leave their secrets where dark can be trusted to hold them. The sanctuary keeps its scrolls. The underworld keeps its sentences. The sky keeps its roads. We keep, each of us, a small, unlighted room inside where the mind can sit with the heart and agree not to interrupt. That room is not a hiding place. It is a healing place, the kind a good city builds for itself, and the kind the body builds on its own if given time. So, as the stories settle, we take from them not speeches, but habits. From Oneiros and his brothers, the habit of preparing a room for sleep, placing one worry in a bowl, dimming to a single lamp, letting a small, careful light do what a blaze cannot. From Phlegyas, ironically tenderly, the habit of checking whether the light we use on ourselves is kind, whether we are opening windows or throwing torches. From Asteria, the habit of scattering when chased, of turning what pursues us into art by changing the medium. Together, they suggest a simple practice: titrate the light, soften the memory, move like stars. We do not need to understand everything we have heard. The old tellers would be pleased if we did not try. Meaning condenses over time like dew. What matters tonight is that your breath has slowed, that your jaw has unclenched, that the room has learned your weight and adjusted to you. If a thought rises and tugs at your sleeve, you can introduce it to the dark and let them become friends. If a face appears that you cannot keep and cannot bear to lose, you can place it gently under Oneiros' lantern and let the light decide what you carry and what you set down. Somewhere between the second and third bell, the night has done its work. The braid lies smooth, and the hand that held it is free to rest. Outside, a small wind moves, leaves against one another with the softest click, like beads on a string. In the east, there is the faintest suggestion that morning exists somewhere, but it is not our concern yet. The gods can attend to their quarrels and their reconciliations. The people of the cities can wake in a little while and fetch water, sweep thresholds, measure grain. For now, we live in the republic of sleep. We have walked together through 3 doors. The door of dreams that choose us kindly. The door of light that learns to be gentle. The door of refusal that becomes a road. We close them without locking. We leave a coin for the ferryman we did not need tonight. A sprig of laurel for a god who knows how to measure. A whisper of thanks to the woman who keeps the sky walked. Lay your head down. The night will keep the secrets that are not ready for day. The stars will keep their rhythm. The bell will not ring again until it needs to. You are safe beside these old stories. You are allowed to rest beside them, the way a traveler sleeps by a well, trusting that water will still be there when he wakes. Breathe in, slowly. Breathe out, slowly. Let the braid loosen. Let the dark be your softest blanket. And when sleep arrives, as it is arriving now, let it carry you gently through the last open gate. There is a room that belongs to every century. It has no walls, or else the walls are the edges of the world. We call it night. People step into it from different doorways. Shepherds from fields, sailors from decks, scholars from lamplit tables, parents from nurseries, kings from halls, lovers from balconies. And yet once inside, they all breathe the same air. Night is the hour when calendars go on speaking, but softly, when the present loosens its grip and the past draws near without needing to be summoned. It is the shared country of human time. In that country, the old Greek words have not finished their work. Hypnos still teaches the art of putting down the day. Oneiros still travels, careful lamped, to decide which images stay and which dissolve. The warning bell of Phlegyas still rings, not to frighten, but to keep the light kind. And Asteria is still writing a path where no roads are paved. If you listen carefully, you can hear their languages. Some you know, some you don't, braiding into one hush that sounds like the sea answering the shore. Night makes us contemporaries with the long ago, not by turning us into ancient people, but by thinning the border between needs. The person who once slept on straw in a sanctuary asked for what you ask. Less noise inside, gentler light, a way through grief that does not break the heart to fix it. The person who burned what he could not bear to see, and then learned to open the window instead. He stands beside anyone who has ever dimmed a phone, drawn a curtain, chosen rest over rumination. The woman who became a constellation keeps watch for every person who has ever sought the elsewhere that is not escape but self-keeping. So, let us look up together, ancients and moderns, shoulder to shoulder, toward the same sky. Even now, in neighborhoods where street lamps pool their gold and windows blink with late shows, the old map is still there. The same belt of 3 stars still leans its straight line. The same sickle still curves above a city's quiet roofs. The same dust river, the road Asteria made, still arches from horizon to horizon on nights clear enough to make the heart spill a little. Where clouds gather, they are the same clouds that once cooled a shepherd's brow, merely wearing a newer wind. We measure with new instruments, yes, clocks that count in glowing digits, apps that tell us when the meteor shower will peak, telescopes that drink starlight and pour out numbers. But the feeling is old, the body loosening at the edge of its day, the mind consenting to be held by something larger than itself, the relief of not having to carry your own life alone for a few hours. The Greeks gave that feeling names and faces so it would not be lonely. We keep their company when we whisper thanks to a darkness that knows how to take care of us. Think of all the places where the same stars are being watched in this moment, from a cabin in the Rockies, where the air is pine sweet and thin, from a small apartment above a late-night deli, where someone leans on a fire escape and lets the city hum recede, from a quiet hospital window where a nurse checks a sleeping child and, for a breath, remembers the sky, from a ship's midnight deck, rope-coiled and salt-sticky, from a porch swing that moves a little even when no one is pushing it. The circumstances differ. The attention is the same. It is the attention of creatures who know they are small and are glad to be. When we say that night is a common space, we do not mean all nights are easy. Some are full of worry. Some are full of ache. But even on those nights, the practices you learned from the old stories still apply. The bowl by the bed, for one worry. The single lamp, the check against glare. Is this brightness helping? Or is it asking too much of me right now? The willingness to scatter a thought into fine dust and let it drift until it loses its edge. These are not the customs of a vanished people. They are the customs of anyone who wishes to sleep well and kindly. And so, we arrive at a very simple philosophy that wears ceremonial robes only when it must. Let the night be what it is, a mercy that returns. Return with it. Return to your breath. Each inhale enters like a tide, slow and sure, smoothing the sand of the mind's shore. Each exhale is the tide's retreat, pulling the day's small debris out into the deeper water, where it becomes what water knows how to make, something harmless, something new. If an old face appears, let Oneiros hold a cool light to it. Keep the warmth. Lay the sharpness down. If a sudden thought blazes, ask Phlegyas' lesson to soften it into a window. If rest feels like a place too narrow to lie down in, ask Asteria to widen it with a handful of gentle sparks. This is the connection between their era and ours, not temples or crowns or the names of kings, but the habits of rest, the agreements we make with darkness so that morning finds us more ourselves, not less. A person 3,000 years ago looked up, felt seen by the sky, and slept. You can too. The continuity is not in the architecture, it is in the pulse. Now the words can become fewer. Let the silence do some speaking. If you would like, step outside for a moment in your mind. Stand at an invented threshold, stone, wood, or nothing at all, and taste the air of night. It is cool, but not unfriendly. It has traveled across fields and lakes and roofs and cheeks to reach you. Somewhere, a dog turns once in its sleep and sighs. Somewhere, a late train lowers its voice as it passes. Somewhere, a wind chime touches itself gently and then is still. You are not alone in the dark. You are in a procession thousands of years long. When you look up, do not look for a lesson. Look for a comfort. It might be a star that seems to hold still just for you. It might be a span of blank sky, generous and uninsistent. It might be the knowledge that the earth is turning you toward morning, whether you strive or not. The night is doing its work. You do not have to supervise. And now, for a quiet, deliberate ending. May the children of sleep keep the room around you soft and simple. May the light that finds you tomorrow be measured, exact, and kind. May your refusals, when you must refuse, turn to roads that others can follow. May your remembering be sweet and your forgetting be merciful. May your mind learn, the way constellations learn, to be many and still be whole. Breathe once more, deeply. Hold it and let it go. The stars you see, or imagine through the ceiling, are the same that kept watch above Greek hills, above ships crossing dark water, above a girl kneeling in a temple and asking for a gentler dream. The sky is older than any of our troubles and spacious enough to cradle them until they cool. And perhaps, listen closely here, perhaps every star in the sky is an as yet untold myth, waiting to dream itself to you. Voice of the night guide. We will slow together now. Fewer words, longer spaces, just enough light to find the pillow. Picture the sea at night, a wide, even breath, arriving and leaving, arriving and leaving. The water knows the shore without thinking. Let your body learn that rhythm. Inhale gently through the nose. 2, 3, 4. Hold, soft as a hand on a doorknob. 2. Exhale through the mouth. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Again. In. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2. Out. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let the breath keep counting even when the mind forgets to. Now the night gathers around you like a calm room. The edges of things are kind. Your jaw loosens. Your hands grow heavier than their stories. Your thoughts slow, then drift apart like boats at slack tide. Over you, the stars keep their quiet appointments. Noticing them is enough. No wish is needed. They are the same lights the ancients saw, lamps in a sky that has never hurried anyone. Far away, a temple holds its hush. Oil lamps make small halos. Stone remembers every soft footstep. Somewhere, a bell answers itself with a second note, then rests. You are welcome in this silence. Let's gather the evening's friendly images and set them by your bed. The sea, breathing for you. The night, folding without weight. The stars, patient and exact. The temple hush, a room that keeps your name safe. Breathe with the sea again. In, 2, 4. Hold. 2. Out. 2. 3. 4. 5. 6. Feel the mattress receive you the way sand receives tidewater, softly, without questions. If a thought comes tapping, open a small window for it. Let a thin ribbon of cool air pass through. Then close the latch and watch the thought turn to harmless starlight dust, scattering until it cannot cling. Your forehead smooths, like water when the wind calms. Your shoulders sink, like oars set gently in the boat. Your chest moves on its own, faithful as waves crossing moonlight. Nothing to solve, nothing to remember. Night is doing the work. In, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2. Out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Each exhale is a small departure, a kind leaving that brings you closer to shore. Let the room grow simpler. One breath, one heartbeat, one long quiet. Behind your closed eyes, the sky writes a soft sentence. You are safe. You may rest. And now, the blessing. Spoken slowly, like a door closing without a sound. May Hypnos fold you in his gentle wings. Sleep peacefully. Your sleep is a myth too, writing itself now, line by line. Kind to your memories, kind to your dreams, kind to your morning. In, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2. Out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let the tide take the last of the day. Let the stars keep watch. Let the temple keep your silence. You are already drifting. We will not follow. We will leave you with the sea, the night, the stars, the hush, and a door that closes softly behind sleep.